Hello, everybody. How's the conference going so far for everybody? You doing all right? Right on, right on. Lunch was amazing, right? I had koi fusion. It was awesome. I can really, too, tell how long it took us all to settle, that we're having a blast. Everybody's happy to see each other again, not on that postage-size stamp thing, as Todd always shouts out. Before we move into our afternoon keynote, I'd like to welcome our afternoon sponsor back to the stage, David Zilke, great friend, and the Port's Director of Air Service back to the stage. So, David.
Hey, Greg.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks. Do you like Greg's glasses? I like those. Thanks, everybody. Great morning this morning. In 1987, March 1st, Delta launched nonstop year-round service to Tokyo, Japan. In 2008, they launched year-round nonstop service to Amsterdam. And over all those years, they've had a huge impact on our ability to get business travelers around the world to and from Oregon, and visitors from all over the world into Oregon to see your attractions here in Oregon. So the economic impact of one of those flights is about $100 million a year for a transoceanic flight. So we are thrilled today to have Joan Wang, who's the Managing Director of Global Sales for Delta Airlines here in the Pacific Northwest, talk to us about Delta, talk to us about what's going on here in Portland with them. And could I have everybody please stand up and give Joan a warm welcome from all 545 of you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for welcoming me to Portland. Portland is an important part of what Delta does in this region. And with 3 years of experiencing COVID together, we actually, in the last 3 years, have done some wonderful things. But before I start, I want to show a video that we've put together. In fact, this audience will be the first time seeing this brand campaign that we've put together, and I'd like to share with you.
Statistically, the world is losing color. Everywhere you look. Gray, beige, greige. But who wants a greige world when we could have this? Honey yellow. Periwinkle. Teal aqua. Indigold. Put another way, things stay the same when the same is where you stay. But at Delta, in every one of the hundreds of destinations we fly to, simply opening your eyes can open your world.
Thank you. I want to say that we've done a study, and particularly in the post-COVID environment, the industry demand for pent-up traffic is $30 billion. That has come together in the last 3 years. That is going to take off. And this is the year that it will be keeping everybody here busy and, prosperous, serving your clients, serving your partners, whether it's coming in to Portland or getting out of Portland, getting out of Oregon, coming in to see Portland. So this is a great opportunity. We at Delta, particularly for Portland, we are investing year on year a 10% increase for Portland's flights. We fly 35 daily flights to 7 destination domestic and 1 international, which, as David pointed out, is to Amsterdam for now. It was actually May 5th last year, we relaunched Amsterdam right after COVID finished and coming out into a busy summer in 2022. And we hope before the end of the year, we'll be able to see more flights, more international routes take place to Portland, and hopefully into Asia and reconnecting where we used to be before COVID happens to all of us. So with that, I want to thank everybody in this room. We've done a lot of investment in the last 3 years to get ourselves prepared so we can all start and reset in embracing this wonderful opportunity for traveling in the industry, and it's because of you that's making it happen. So I want to thank everybody here. And I also want to tell you that I do come and bear with gifts today. So if you can take out your boarding pass that you had in your hand before you enter this room. We want to give away a pair of tickets to anywhere you wish to fly that Delta flies. And in your ticket, if you look in the back, you find a purple star. Congratulations. Please come to the stage. We'd like to present to you our ticket and boarding pass to where you want to fly. And now I'll pass back the stage to David for you to... Oh, sorry, it'll be Todd. Sorry, Todd.
Joan, thank you so much. Drinks on the Corvallis CVB tonight. Congratulations. And Joan, thank you so much for being here and representing such a fine airline. We are very lucky to be so well served by Delta and have been for so many years. So thank you for joining us here today. Appreciate you very much, John. You know, this morning I spoke about the adoption of our 10-year strategic vision for Travel Oregon and how it really embodies the destination stewardship approach and serves as a foundation for all of our work over the next decade. Our work, then, must be in service to those 4 objectives that I spoke to and the strategies that are then established to achieve them. As Travel Oregon envisions what that next decade is going to look like for Oregon and for tourism in our state, we will work towards executing those objectives that are outlined in that strategic vision with actionable biennial plans. Plans that will be developed with this strategic vision as its framework, helping us stay on track, monitor our progress towards achieving that vision. 10 years is a long time, and it's imperative that we continue to engage and collaborate with you every step of the way, because we don't want just a pre-pandemic Oregon. We want to create a resilient Oregon. To me, this means acknowledging and embracing all the benefits that travel and tourism are, can, and must bring to Oregon. We're very adept at sharing the vital economic impact numbers, spending and jobs and taxes and earnings, and we grasp the impact of sales trips and missions and marketing campaigns. And we know that harnessing the innovations of a community around a shared vision for tourism can result in new business startups and enhanced livability derived from new restaurants or new performing arts venues and other amenities that may arise as a result. But what about the softer, subtler, yet I would say arguably more critical, personally transformative impacts of travel on the human spirit, on global diplomacy, and on a sense of personal safety and value and belonging? As Mark Twain so eloquently stated when reflecting on one of his international excursions, It would be well if such an excursion could be gotten up every year and the system regularly inaugurated. Travel is fatal to prejudice, to bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of people and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all of one's lifetime. So we must desire an Oregon that is welcoming to all, a place where, as we state in our second objective, that is striving to be a place of equity. A place where, working in collaboration with you, we can increase awareness of, advocate for, and advance social equity within Oregon's tourism workforce, and foster deep relationships and elevate the voices of historically and currently underserved and under-resourced communities, including the BIPOC community, LGBTQ+ community, and our 9 federally recognized tribes. To share more about Travel Oregon's work, specifically with Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes, please join me in welcoming to our stage Lisa Edel, Travel Oregon's Director of Strategic Partnerships. Lisa?
Thank you, Todd, and good afternoon, everybody. It's nice not to just be reading housekeeping notes. Todd mentioned earlier the importance of travel on the human spirit and the value of belonging. And no one has made our industry, or me personally, understand that more than our tribal partners. In 2019, Travel Oregon had the opportunity to meet individually with Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes on their homelands across the state. Those conversations started a partnership not even a pandemic could stop. And from there, a tribal tourism committee was reborn. This committee has sparked collaboration not only with Travel Oregon, but with so many partners across the state. Oregon's travel and tourism industry has always done an excellent job of reminding visitors and residents what makes Oregon uniquely Oregon. But I am so especially proud of the work we're striving to do in this space. Most importantly, recognizing that we can't tell the story without sharing the story of Oregon's partners. We recognize the significant contribution the tribes have made and continue to make in their respective communities and rural Oregon, and are proud to be working with them to promote their tribal tourism assets. Visitors and residents are interested in seeing more of Oregon, while also learning about and honoring the people who have lived here since time immemorial. We now have a new, easy way to plan a trip centered on the state's tribal cultures. This year, Travel Oregon partnered with the 9 tribes to produce a travel guide to Oregon Indian Country, a comprehensive overview of all things Native, from gatherings to gaming to cultural centers and tribal commerce. The guide was published in August of 2022, and it is by far the most extensive look at tribal tourism since a committee representing the tribes collaborated with the state's Tourism Commission back in 2005. The guide invites travelers to our thriving tribal communities to see the beauty of Oregon through the eyes of our partners, experience the best tribal hospitality, and connect through their stories and their cultural experiences. The success of our industry relies on strong partnerships. And if you know me, you know I don't take that lightly. In fall of 2022, the Tribal Tourism Working Committee attended the American Indian Tourism Conference in California. This allowed for open discussions between our tribal partners and other tribes from the Pacific Northwest and around the United States. It gave Travel Oregon a better understanding on how to support the tribal partners through tourism. A large part of those conversations were how we can strive to co-create the management of our destinations, to be co-stewards of Oregon, our lands, and our waters. Work definitely lies ahead in this space, but you can already see these visions being applied. One example being the partnership between the Klamath tribes and Travel Southern Oregon with their Spring Creek Visitor Access Improvement Project at Collier Memorial State Park. This was a project that was born out of our Destination Ready programming. The tribes in Oregon are as culturally rich and diverse as the landscapes they live on, and each plays an important role in the vitality of our state. Recently, Travel Oregon and some of our key DMO partners gathered with the Tribal Working Committee for a strategic opportunity meeting. This provided space for all partners to learn about how the long-standing traditions of the individual tribes and how they experience their unique connection to the land. The outcomes of that meeting surfaced key priority areas for the committee and the work that they see envisioned for the future. Enhancing and expanding directional and interpretive signage, food and celebration trails, and leveraging existing tools and resources. Those are just a few. This committee will continue to meet monthly and will be continuing to move this work forward for the betterment of all. Reestablishing relationships is not always easy, and I want to acknowledge we still have a lot of work to do in this space. The partnerships we are continuing to build with our 9 federally recognized tribal partners is not an equity investment, but rather an opportunity to have a stronger perspective on our history, to allow a better understanding of the past and the present, and most importantly, a clearer vision for the future. Thank you so much.
So beautifully and perfectly said, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you to those here in the room who are members of Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes. Your trust and your confidence in us and in doing this work together, I will be forever grateful for. It's my pleasure right now to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon's session. We've known Corey for a while. We follow him online. We've had the pleasure of watching some of his most recent video clips as he's been traveling through Oregon. Don't know if many of you have had an opportunity to follow him, but I have. Let me tell you a little bit about Corey. Corey was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy at the age of 3 and has used a powered wheelchair since he was 4, which is when he took his first trip to Walt Disney World. He'll tell you more about that experience, but let's just say that with a very determined attitude, he decided to make travel a priority in his life, no matter the obstacles that might stand before him. He started Curb Free Corey with Corey Lee in 2013, and since then has traveled to all 7 continents and 37 countries, inspiring many other travelers to get out, to stand out, and to live fully. Corey's mission is to show you how to travel, where to travel, and most importantly, why travel as a person with a disability. Please join me in welcoming Corey Lee to our stage. Corey.
Thank you so much for having me. I, in the past 4 or 5 days, have become a huge fan of your state. This is my 2nd time here. Last time, I really only got to explore the Portland area, but this time, I've been in Bend over the weekend, and I even went adaptive snow skiing for the first time ever. So it was incredible. It's something I have wanted to do like pretty much my entire life, but I hate the cold weather, so I keep putting it off every year. And when Travel Oregon reached out and they were like, hey, we want you to speak at this conference, and can we also maybe take off this bucket list item of yours and take you adaptive skiing? I was like, I'm just gonna finally do it. We're gonna try it out. And it went 10 times better than I expected. I would love to do it again and can't wait to come back to Oregon and do it on Mount Hood or somewhere different. So incredible. I also went to the world's last Blockbuster, which is pretty amazing. As a 90s kid, I was in there like almost in tears at how nostalgic it was. And last night, I had the best Southern food of my life at Screen Door here in Portland. So to be honest, as someone that is from Georgia, I thought, how are they going to do this? But you guys killed it. So yeah, phenomenal. And so yeah, Portland, Oregon has been amazing so far, and I can't wait to explore even more throughout this week. Tomorrow we're doing the Columbia River Gorge for the first time, going to see some waterfalls. So I'm really excited for that. But I want to talk to you all today about how we can make Oregon the most inclusive and accessible destination in the US. I believe it can be done, and I want to take you step by step through exactly how we can do that. But first, I want to share a bit of my story with you all and some of my background with my disability and my travels. So in 2013, I started curbfreewithcoreylee.com, which is my travel blog that focuses on traveling the world in a powered wheelchair. So on the blog, I try to share how I travel, where I go, what can people do once they get in destinations with a wheelchair. And so it's been a whirlwind of a journey, to say the least. I've been to all 7 continents and more than 40 countries now, actually, since starting the blog in 2013. Later this year, I'm doing Egypt, I'm doing Switzerland, going paragliding over the Alps, which is something I never thought I would do. So it's still more than I could have ever dreamed of. But to go all the way back, I was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy at the age of 2. So my mom, who is here today, she's raising her hand, she started noticing that I would take a few steps and then I would like face plant the ground and fall down. And so the most steps that I ever really took was about 8 steps. And so on that 8th step, I would consistently, day after day, just fall down, and she started getting really concerned and took me to a local doctor where they did a muscle biopsy and discovered that I had spinal muscular atrophy, which is a form of muscular dystrophy, which you've all probably heard of, like the Jerry Lewis telethon. So it is a form of that. And spinal muscular atrophy, it is a genetic neuromuscular disorder that affects motor neurons in the spinal cord, and it does cause progressive degeneration and weakness. So what that basically means is that I don't have the same abilities today that I'll, for example, have 5 years from now, 10 years from now, so I will get weaker over time. And that's really a constant reminder for me to do as much as I can now, while I'm undoubtedly more able than I will be in the future. And so when I started the blog in 2013, I really started it because, I didn't know, with SMA, I actually Googled it, which is something that I definitely don't recommend doing, and looking on WebMD, so never do that again. But I read when I was about 21 years old that the average life expectancy for someone with SMA was 31 years old. And so when I read that, I was kind of like, oh, so I really got to speed this thing up. Like, if I'm going to see the world, I've got to do it now. And I'm now 33, so proved WebMD wrong, luckily. And also, as I said, SMA, it is genetic. And so these are the wheelchair singers, the famous York family. They are actually my great-great aunts and uncles. There were 13 siblings in the family, and out of the 13 siblings, 4 of them had SMA and used a wheelchair. And so this was back in like the 60s and 70s when there really, was no Americans with Disabilities Act. There was little to no accessibility, and they had enough motivation and determination to actually become singers. They recorded albums. They were quite popular in the southeastern US especially, and they were gospel singers. So they would tour around, go to different churches in the southeast, but they lived in a time when there was no accessibility. And so they would have to be physically picked up out of their wheelchairs and carried into the churches. They would also have to be loaded up in vehicles that were not accessible with a ramp or a lift and be driven to these destinations. And so they never flew. They couldn't do that at that time with a wheelchair. And so just growing up kind of hearing their story and how motivated they were to still accomplish their dreams and go for everything they wanted despite, having SMA, that made me view my disability as something that couldn't really hinder me. So I think that I'm, where I am today because of them, and hopefully I'm carrying their legacy forward as well. So thanks. If we can go back a few. There we go. So I ended up going through school, had a mostly normal experience when I was growing up, and went to school with pretty much the same people from kindergarten until I graduated high school. So they never really, treated me any differently. They always knew that I was in a wheelchair. And I ended up actually graduating college in 2014 and with a degree in marketing. And at that time, I was researching and trying to, put in job applications and find out where I wanted to work within marketing and advertising. And so I kept putting in applications and getting no responses. And I think a big part of that was because I was disclosing my disability within the applications. And so I just wasn't getting any calls at all like all of my peers were, for example. And so finally, one day, I was sitting at home after months and months of putting in job applications, and I got a phone call from a company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they said that if I could fly up the next day, they would give me an interview and give me a shot. And so they flew me up to Pittsburgh the very next day, and as soon as I went into the hiring manager's office, despite our talks beforehand with other HR reps from that company, he immediately looked at me and looked me kind of up and down and said, well, this job involves some traveling, so you're definitely not the best fit. And at that moment, I knew that he only saw my wheelchair and didn't see me as a person at all. And so before I was even given a chance, I was immediately let down only because of my disability. And so this was kind of my experience when I was graduating college, trying to get into the workforce. And after that interview, I was like, okay, now I've got to fly back home, definitely not getting that job. What am I going to do with my life? And why did I even go to college for 4 years and major in marketing if nobody's even going to see me as someone other than just a disabled person that uses a wheelchair? And so I was really discouraged, but also around that same time, within that same week actually, I was researching for a trip to Australia. I was going to Australia for my college graduation trip. And I got online, started Googling accessible things to do in Australia, and pretty quickly noticed that there was no information about accessible travel within Australia. And so that got me thinking, well, are there resources for people that, want to travel in the US as a wheelchair user, or if they want to travel to Europe or Asia or Africa or South America, all of these other wonderful places around the world. And there were really only about 2 websites out there in 2013 that had accessible travel information readily available. And so with the hiring manager telling me no, and then realizing that there was such a lack of accessible travel information around the same time, those 2 things merging together, it inspired me to start Curb Free with Corey Lee and hopefully, make a path for wheelchair users moving forward where they could just get online and quickly figure out what can they do if they travel to Australia or Colombia or to Oregon or no matter where they're going. And so that is where the idea was born. And since then, it's been a whirlwind. So I've been to Australia. It was incredible. I've also been on safari in South Africa. And this picture was actually the first elephant that I saw. So I immediately started crying my eyes out. It was just the most incredible experience. I've also been trekking through the Amazon rainforest. So this is a special off-road wheelchair that they made in the Amazon, and it was had handles in the front and then handles in the back. so that somebody could get in the front and kind of carry me through the rainforest, and then someone in the back also to assist. And they also like put wooden boards behind me to make a backrest, pillows for support, and then like took Velcro straps and kind of tied me into the chair so that the anacondas couldn't like take me away too easily, which was nice. And then I've been to Morocco and ridden a camel. So there was an adaptive camel seat on the back of the camel, and there was a company actually in Morocco called Morocco Accessible Travel, and they invented this really cool adaptive camel seat. So they're the only place in the world that's doing that, but I think that accessibility is constantly improving, and so even though something may not have been accessible 5 years ago, it may be accessible today, which is pretty exciting. And India was somewhere that I really always wanted to go to for my entire life, ever since I first saw a picture of the Taj Mahal. But there was zero accessible transportation within India until 2018. And so as soon as I hopped online and learned about this company in 2018, I booked the flight the very next day and went to India, and it was 10 times better than I could have ever dreamed of. So probably my favorite trip of all time. And right before the pandemic started, literally 1 week before the pandemic started, I was in Antarctica right before my 30th birthday. So I set a goal to visit all 7 continents before I turned 30, and I hit that goal with a week to spare. So it was amazing. And I also became the first person to reach all 7 continents in a powered wheelchair when that happened. So hopefully breaking boundaries and showing others what is possible by doing that. And one thing that has been really incredible since starting Curb Free, every year since 2018, I have done group trips. So these are trips where some of my followers that use wheelchairs can join me in exciting destinations. So we've, so far on Curb Free group trips, been to Morocco, we've done Iceland, Costa Rica, and this past November, this is us in Patagonia in Chile in South America. So we've been able to visit some really remarkable destinations as a group of wheelchair users. And I wish you guys could have seen the faces of the Chilean people as 4 wheelchair users are going down the sidewalk in their city. They're staring at us like, what are they doing here? Why did the wheelchairs invade? But it's, I think it really changes the perspective, though, when people see that. And hopefully it changes their mindset, that people with disabilities are out there traveling. We want to visit your destination if we're able to physically. And so this June, we're doing the 5th annual Curb Free group trip in Barcelona, Spain, and Catalonia. So I'm really looking forward to that. But hopefully one day we'll do one in Oregon. I think that would be a really fun group trip also. And so now that we've kind of covered my disability, how I started the blog, now I want to get to the good stuff. So how can Oregon become a really inclusive and accessible destination? So to start us out, I want to kind of go through how exactly I plan a trip whenever I'm planning a trip as a wheelchair user, because I'm assuming that most of you in this audience, maybe you don't have a wheelchair user in your family or that lives with you, and you haven't really planned a trip for a wheelchair user before maybe. So we'll go through it step by step. But first of all, if you only remember one thing from this presentation, I hope that it's this, that the word accessible means something different to every person with a disability. So what's accessible for me as a powered wheelchair user may not be accessible for a manual wheelchair user, or for someone that uses a scooter, or even another person that uses a powered wheelchair that's the exact same make and model as mine. So each disability is totally different. So when I'm telling you about kind of my experiences, I'm really only talking about that from my perspective. So it's not like a one-all for every disability out there, but I do want to share what I look for, and hopefully it's beneficial for you to learn. So the number one thing whenever I'm planning a trip, before I look into accessible things to do in the destination or where to stay, I always look for information about accessible transportation. And so whenever I go to different tourism boards' websites and CVBs, they'll frequently have an article about 10 accessible things to do within that destination, which is great, but that really could be a lot more helpful if I knew exactly how I was getting to those 10 attractions. So the number one thing I would really recommend that you lead with if you are writing about accessibility is transportation, because without accessible transportation, like taxis or rental vans or public transportation, then I'm just going to be stuck in the airport when I get to that destination and unable to even get to the hotel room. And so really including that accessible travel transportation information within your website would be tremendously helpful for everyone. And then secondly, after I've kind of looked at transportation and know what my options are, I can then look into finding about what hotels I want to stay in and which hotels may be good for accessibility. So some of the things that I look for are things like roll-in showers, the width of the doorway, what's the spaciousness like within the room. Can I maneuver around the room easily? Is there a desk that I can pull under to be able to get some work done? Things like that. And so also grab bars are really important, and like a handheld shower wand. And then for the bed, I always have to check if there is clearance underneath the bed. So what a lot of new hotels are doing is creating like a platform bed, so there's zero clearance underneath. But I use a Hoyer lift on a lot of trips, depending on who I'm traveling with, to be able to get into the bed. And so this is a picture of me in a Hoyer lift. So it's basically a sling that lifts me up out of my wheelchair and helps me get into the bed or into the shower. And it's just like a transfer device that helps me maneuver around. And so the legs on the Hoyer lift, there at the bottom of the picture, you can see them. It has two legs there, and they need to be able to roll all the way under the bed in the hotel. And so whenever I'm like calling hotels, trying to figure out if they're accessible for me, and I'm trying to explain what a Hoyer lift is, they never have a clue. And on every destination website I've ever seen, they don't include this information in their accessibility page. So I've really never seen one that does. So if including something like the clearance underneath the bed within your accessibility page, if you're talking about accessible hotels in your destination, that would be tremendously helpful. And then after I've kind of navigated with like transportation and the hotels, the more boring stuff, I can finally get into the fun stuff. So accessible attractions. If it's a beach destination, things like beach mats, beach wheelchairs, are those available? Or any kind of outdoor trails that are accessible, museums, or even disability-specific organizations. So one thing that I really love doing whenever I travel is reaching out to local organizations that focus on disability or adaptive sports. So here in Oregon, when I went snow skiing, I went with Oregon Adaptive Sports. They were incredible. They put my mind at ease, eased all of my worries about what that experience was going to be like, and it was really fun just to get to know them and their mission. So that's something I really love doing. So I think, if your destination does have an organization like that, that's something really unique that you can promote outside of just like the standard museums and other things to do within the destination. So this was another example of an adaptive sports organization. This was in Vermont this past fall. I went biking for the first time. So I was like 32 years old, never gone biking, and finally got to do it thanks to Vermont Adaptive. And so they were amazing, and that's just something really unique that you can't do in a lot of destinations. So as soon as I learned about that and that I could do that in Vermont, I was like, okay, let's book the trip. Let's try it, and let's go see the fall foliage in Vermont. Another experience was in Madison, Wisconsin, where I was able to go indoor rock climbing. And so this is definitely something I never thought I would do in my life because I never thought it would be accessible. But there's a climbing gym there called Boulder's Climbing Gym, and they specialize in adaptive climbing for people of all abilities. So no matter what your disability is, they will get you on that wall and climbing. They also do this outdoors on like mountain ranges, which I was not brave enough yet, but maybe one day. And I've gone hot air ballooning 3 times over Israel, which is pictured here, over the Negev Desert. I've also gone over Spain and over Las Vegas, Nevada. So these are just really unique experiences that, like, when I'm promoting this to my audience on Instagram or on the blog or Facebook, they're seeing this and they're like, wow, you know, I never thought that I could go hot air ballooning, but I'm going to book a trip to Israel now just to do that. And so, like, we as people with disabilities, we want these unique experiences. And so if, you know, you have any of that to offer here in Oregon, which I know that you guys do because I just did it, and Bend over the weekend. So definitely take advantage of that, promote that to its fullest extent, and I promise you that that will get people with disabilities in your state and wanting to travel to Oregon. So now, what can destinations do to attract wheelchair users? So the number one thing I would say is to provide accessibility information on your website and make it easy to find. Also, be as specific as possible about accessibility. So exactly who is it accessible for? What disabilities is it accessible for? And so one destination that's doing a phenomenal job of this is Visit Florida. So if you go to Visit Florida's homepage, they have an accessibility tab up on the top. I think it says accessible travel. And if you click on it, it takes you to this big page, and they have articles and videos about pretty much every destination within Florida and what its accessibility is like. And so the video content is really, I think, what sets Florida apart from every other destination that I've seen on their tourism websites. And so, you know, seeing like a picture or reading an article about accessibility is great, and that does help. But when I'm seeing that video content, I'm getting even more encouraged and like more brave to know that it is really accessible. And how accessible is it for me when I'm seeing that video content? And so if you're not already doing that, I would really encourage you to get video content up on your website detailing accessibility, and also working with local wheelchair users to get that done, I think. So even aside from like hiring influencers to come into your destination, working with those local disability organizations like vocational rehabilitation or any kind of adaptive sports organizations in your destination could be a good place to start to getting that video content that will feature an actual person with a disability instead of just putting like somebody that's able-bodied from your office in a wheelchair for the day and putting that on your website. Trust me, I've seen it done, and it takes away the authenticity for that destination. North Carolina is somewhere that did something really unique. So they actually published a book called Access North Carolina. It's over 300 pages long, and in the guidebook, it details pretty much every attraction, hotel, restaurant within North Carolina. So they hired a person with a disability to write this guide and detail accessibility. It took them a couple of years to write it. But now they give it out as a free resource from their visitor's guide. So from Visit North Carolina, they give it out to people that are coming into the state. And so that's something really amazing. And I haven't seen any other destination in the country create a full guidebook for accessibility. So I loved it. And they also put me on the cover of their second edition, which I thought was pretty awesome. Okay. And Minnesota recently published their 2023 Minnesota Travel Guide. And so this is just like the free resource that they mail out to people. I'm sure Oregon has one. And they did a pretty big section on accessible travel within Minnesota. They did hire me to travel to Minnesota and write this guide. And it was a few pages within the guidebook, but this is something that's, you know, going out to people around the country that are thinking about traveling to Minnesota. It's completely free. And I was just really happy to see this because every year I do order these guides from different states, and you would be amazed at how few states are including any kind of accessibility information in these travel guides. And so this is something I love to see, and I know that Georgia, they did this for 2023 also, Minnesota. There are a few more that are starting to do this, but it's still very, very rare to find this in the official state travel guides. Also working with disabled writers and influencers to promote your destination. Just seeing kind of that firsthand perspective about what accessibility is like for that person with a disability is invaluable. So, and it can really be the needle that moves the thread for someone else with a disability to book a vacation to your destination. Just, I would say in the accessible travel space, there maybe are like 10 of us influencers that are out there that are traveling. Maybe like 5 of us are doing it full time. And so, people with disabilities, they do follow one of the 5 of us probably to get their travel input and figure out where should they go, why should they go to that destination. And so just seeing that on their Facebook or Instagram or TikTok could really inspire them to go somewhere that they never thought was possible. And so if you want to take a picture of this, feel free, but it's just the Instagram usernames of some of the influencers that I know and am friends with that use a wheelchair. And I can vouch for every single person on this list. If you, I'm at the top, of course, because I like to work, but anyone on this list I can totally vouch for. If they come to your destination, I can promise you that they would do a phenomenal job at promoting what is accessible within your destination. So definitely reach out to anyone there if you are thinking about hosting someone to cover accessibility for you. Also, putting wheelchair users in your advertising is monumental. So Celebrity Cruises, they recently did an all-inclusive campaign where they hired Jillian Mercado, who is pictured here in a powered wheelchair, to promote Celebrity Cruises. So celebrity isn't something that's only for people with disabilities. This campaign even wasn't just for people with disabilities, but they featured a powered wheelchair user in their advertising. And the disability community noticed immediately and shared it like wildfire. So this was everywhere last summer that I looked in the disability, Facebook groups, on Instagram. Everyone I knew shared this advertisement because it was something that we haven't seen before, with seeing a major cruise line go that in depth with hiring a wheelchair user to be in their ads. And so that was amazing. And so, even if, Travel Oregon, for example, if, they are maybe, revamping their website and put a wheelchair user on the home page, even in an article that doesn't talk about accessibility, just seeing ourselves represented really makes us take notice and want to travel to that destination because we feel like we're included. And so this is a video that Panama City Beach, Florida, did last summer. It was a commercial that aired all along the East Coast, a lot along the Southeast. And it's not completely about accessibility, but I want you guys just to watch it, and then we'll talk about it.
Miles of sugar white sands and endless turquoise waters mean fun for all at the Real Fun Beach. Get on board and kick up some surf. Or just take it all in and float the day away. Reel in the fun or catch a wave. Go for a ride or just enjoy the view. There's front row fun at every turn and a chance to play around every corner. Find your favorite spot and be inspired. There's fun for all in Panama City Beach.
And so this is by far the most inclusive commercial I've ever seen for a destination. They included wheelchair users like me. They also included people with Down syndrome. And then there were just able-bodied people that didn't have a disability. And so being able to see that, that people with disabilities are included, but also just, everyday able-bodied people that don't have a disability was amazing. And I was really honored to be included within that commercial. So that's something that I would love to see more of, is more representation within advertising, within the travel industry, because there is so little of it. And so now, perhaps the most important part, why is it important to attract wheelchair users to Oregon? By making your destination as accessible as possible, you're not only helping me now, but you're also potentially helping yourself or your friends and family in the future. So the disability community is the only community in the world that anyone in this room could join at any time. So, and the fact of the matter is that probably everyone in this room is going to be disabled one day in some way. So as we age, we do rely on things like walkers, wheelchairs, scooters, and different mobility aids. And so everyone that I'm looking at is probably going to be disabled one day. And so, I mean, I know it sounds maybe a little harsh to say that, but it's the truth. And I think that, the sooner that we realize that, the sooner that we'll see more accessibility within the travel industry and the more priority that that will take. Also, approximately 1 in 4 people have a disability, so 25% of the population, and 13% of those people have a mobility-related disability. So we are a huge market. We want to travel to your destination if we're able to, and we want to spend our money within your destination if we're able to. According to a recent survey conducted by the Open Doors organization, adults with disabilities spend over $58 billion per year just on travel. So the market is huge. The amount of money that is being poured into the travel industry from my community of people with disabilities is astronomical. And if your destination is not accessible, you're not focusing on accessible advertising, then you're missing out on a huge chunk of change. And I would love to see Oregon be able to get some of that money. And so whenever I'm thinking about, accessible destinations within the US, there are really probably 3 or 4 that come to mind immediately and that are doing a really phenomenal job of accessibility. And those same few destinations are kind of getting the entire disability community's money. And so I think of places like New York City. They have a lot of accessible taxis now, even though the subway is terrible. Washington, D.C. is probably the most accessible city in the US and maybe in the world. It's where the ADA was passed in 1990, so no surprise there, but they're doing a really phenomenal job. And so these destinations are getting a lot of that money, and I think we as people with disabilities are very loyal. So if we go somewhere like DC and have a great time and find out, that accessibility is really good, or to Disney World, then we're going to keep going back there year after year and keep putting our money into that same destination over and over and over and over again. And so if Oregon could just, really, focus on accessibility. I know you guys are already doing a phenomenal job because I'm here keynoting. So you're already way ahead of the game. Most other states are not having a panel or a keynote speaker to talk about accessibility. So I think that you guys are way ahead of the game already, and I've scouted like the Travel Oregon website, the Visit Portland website. They have really good accessibility pages, but I think there's still so much further that we can go when we're talking about accessibility. And so if we can make Oregon a really inclusive leader, then you guys will be dominating the game within the US travel market and getting people with disabilities here in Oregon. And so when I was growing up, my mom always told me, if you can't stand up, stand out. And so let's make Oregon stand out for everyone that can't stand up. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I have my handles here if anybody wants to. Feel free to connect with me, email me, bring me on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. But if you want to talk further, I'm always happy to talk. And I don't know if we have a little bit of time for like Q&A if we want to do that. Yes, we do. Okay. Yeah. Well, they said it was the biggest snowstorm of the season, so yeah, I got pretty lucky. It was amazing though, like the coolest experience of my life probably. Like I can't wait to do it again. Yeah, of course.
Did you ever contact the man that denied you the job and tell him, haha?
I did not, but I really wish I still had his contact information, and I would just like mail him a postcard every time I go somewhere. Like, I wish. I think I just like blocked him immediately after that, but I should have kept it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Cora. I really appreciate everything you've said. But
Yeah.
one of the things I was curious is how many non-disabled people you bring along with you on your average trip. So if you weren't going there, how many other people, non-disabled, would not be going along with you?
Yeah, so I always have at least one person to join me. So one companion and care attendant at least. But if it's ever an international trip within the past 2 years, I've started taking 2 people with me. So, and I think that, people with disabilities, we are always traveling with someone. So that's like more money, more people within the destination when we do visit.
Yeah, you
And
said
so,
the 1 in 4 number, but it's definitely blocking out more than just 1 in 4 people if you're not selling for accessible.
Yeah, for sure. And if
you're
there's a
also-
group, if there's a group of like 8 people in the family, and only 1 is a wheelchair user, then all 8 of those people are not going to that destination if it's not fully accessible. And so, it can really just be one person that makes the difference when deciding where to travel with a disability.
Hey,
Yeah.
Corey, I was just curious about the hotel accessibility piece of that. The machine that you use, can you tell us the name of that again?
Yeah, it's a Hoyer lift.
Hoyer lift.
Yeah, Hoyer lift.
Is that a pretty standard piece of equipment for machine?
Yeah.
Or for powered wheelchair users?
Yeah, for sure. So it's pretty much anybody that uses a powered wheelchair probably uses that Hoyer lift. So it's very popular, and some hotels will even have something like a ceiling hoist, which is the same type of thing, but they already include that. But the only hotels in the U.S. that I know of that have that are in Las Vegas. So the Bellagio has it. I think the Venetian, like MGM, has it. But if Oregon could get some hotels to already include that, so you're not having to like fly with it because it's such a big piece of equipment, that would be incredibly helpful.
Beautiful. And the access to the information about the measurements and the needs for those is pretty easy to find?
Yeah. If you just Google like Hoyer lift, a million options will come up. Yep.
Hi, we have a group here from Cascade Locks, and we heard that you're coming to visit our town. We would love to get with you. When are you coming?
Cascade Locks?
It's in the gorge. It's on the way, yeah.
I'm going to the Columbia River Gorge tomorrow, but yeah,
Oh,
I'm
tomorrow.
excited. Yeah.
Okay, we will miss you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have been to Portland before, but didn't get to go that last time. And so ever since then, in 2017, I've been like, God, I should have went to the Columbia River Gorge. So finally. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi. So my question is, it feels like more and more we hear about issues with wheelchairs on airplanes, and when people in their wheelchairs go to their seat and then they're put underneath and they tend to break. So is there anything that us as travel industry professionals should kind of do, or resources we should be aware of if someone who's visiting us maybe ran into that and they're a wheelchair user?
Yeah. I would say that air travel, like no offense to Delta, that's maybe here, I don't know if they've left yet, but I am very loyal to Delta and kind of always fly with them 99% of the time, but my wheelchair does get damaged, I would say 75% of the time that I fly in some way. So I usually am able to drive it out of the airport, but a few times I've not been able to drive it out of the airport. And so it is something that I constantly worry about. And I think that, whenever I'm hearing from my audience, my followers and readers, it's their number one concern. And for any wheelchair user that doesn't travel, I would say that it's strictly because they're so afraid of air travel. And so as a destination, I think, there's maybe not a ton that you can do to change that, but there is a really great organization called All Wheels Up. And they are based in Texas, and Austin, Texas, I believe, but they are the only organization in the world that's fighting to get a wheelchair spot on airplanes. And so they're a nonprofit 501c3. And so whenever I'm like giving out, trying to like donate somewhere, I always give it to them. And I think that, if we could get a wheelchair spot on airplanes where I could just roll on the plane, stay in my chair, it would totally change the game for me, for sure, to eliminate worrying about if it's going to be damaged or not. So yeah, All Wheels Up, incredible. Please donate if you have the means.
Hi, I'm over here.
Hey.
Hi. So in the Gorge, there's a group of us who are doing a project for accessibility, like, as there are with many places in Oregon. So I think we're all taking your advice. But we're wondering, if we were to bring in influencers, one of the 5 or all 5, what is an ideal way for us to do that? What does that look like? What's the ideal trip for that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I have only done individual trips, so I've never gone with a group because I think, as someone with a disability, it's really hard for me to go with a group, even if there are other people with disabilities, because all of our needs are going to be different. So some of us may be able to, go out all day and, go out late or to dinner late or whatever, but others may need to, go back to the hotel early. And so it's hard to plan a group trip, so I would really try to avoid that. But I think, individual trips are really the way to go for people with disabilities and influencers. And then just ask them, don't be scared to ask, any questions. I get a lot of questions about language around disabilities. So, what's the right term to say? Can you say wheelchair bound? Can you say wheelchair user? Person with a disability? Should it be person first language? And so people are really nervous to always ask me that, but it's just ask the question. I'm happy to answer anything, and yeah.
Hi, I'm with the Portland Bureau of Transportation. I'm the ADA coordinator, actually.
Nice.
So you've mentioned accessible attractions in places you've visited. I'm wondering if you can name any cities that are getting it right on their transportation system from just being able to get around the city really well.
Definitely DC is phenomenal. The metro in DC is just it's so much cheaper than having to get a taxi to take everywhere, because accessible taxis are often way more expensive than a regular taxi, which is kind of unfair, but it's the truth. So just being able to use the metro and easily get around DC is amazing and super helpful. And then New York, also, when I went to New York for the first time 15 years ago, there were not many accessible taxis at all, but now there are literally hundreds of them that are accessible. So it's become really easy in recent years, but the subway is still trash, to be honest, but, and could be a lot more accessible, but the taxis in New York are great. Yeah, no problem.
I think we just have one last question here for you.
Thank you. You talked about, I'm just wondering what kind of qualifying questions, if you are planning a trip for a wheelchair couple, you talking about if you're using a powered wheelchair, they're probably using the Hoyer lift.
Yeah.
And so in planning a trip for them, that was whoa, wait a minute, I need to think about this.
Yeah.
So what other qualifying questions do you have that would be good to be asking?
Yeah, I mean, I would just ask them, what accessibility accommodations do they need? I mean, when it comes to things like hotels, do they need an ADA room? Do they need one queen bed, or one king bed or 2 queen beds? Because a lot of hotels in their ADA rooms, they will only put 1 bed. But for me and my mom, when we're traveling together, it would be better if we had the 2 beds, And so that's something that's really rare to find, surprisingly, an accessible room with 2 beds. So that's something that I really like. The roll-in shower is my number 1 thing, probably. So I can't transfer into a bathtub at all. And so I need it to be the roll-in shower with no lip at all to get into the shower. So sometimes a hotel will say that it's a roll-in shower, even if it's a walk-in shower. And those are 2 totally different things. So the walk-in shower will have a step to get inside usually, or a lip on it that's about 1 to 2 inches tall. And I cannot roll into that at all, so it's impossible for me. And so just being able to know the difference between a walk-in shower versus a roll-in is a big one. And then I think transportation is like the biggest. So like any kind of rental van companies that are in your area would be good to know, or if there's accessible public transportation as well. Thank you. Yeah, we could probably talk all day about that. I love that question, but there's so much I would put into it. Yeah. Oh, I think we have, was that the last one, or we can do one more maybe?
I don't know if it's on. Oh, there it is. Hi, I'm Angela Nelson. I'm the Vice President of EDI at Travel Portland, and I've had the pleasure of seeing you in other conferences, so thank you for the work that you're doing to bring awareness. Some of the conversations I've been a part of in the past is around universal design and how builders can begin to build with that in mind versus just AD accessibility. So I'm just curious kind of what your thoughts on that, and then also, do you do advocacy? Because I feel like that's where a lot of the changes really occur. It's on the advocacy side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, universal design is the best. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, basically, for anyone in the room that maybe doesn't know what universal design is, it's like if we were building a new building and thinking about putting stairs in one section and then a ramp at another entrance, like why not just put the ramp at every section? And so everybody in this room can use a ramp, but not everyone can use steps. And so with universal design, it's including literally everyone within the universe. And so everyone can use that. So I'm a huge fan of universal design. One of the best examples I've ever seen was at the University of California at Berkeley. And they, in the Ed Roberts Center on campus, it's like 3 stories tall, but instead of having stairs that go up, they had a ramp that like did a big circle all the way around the building. So there were 0 stairs in the entire building, even though it was 3 stories tall. And that, when I saw that, I was like, this is amazing. And I was like going as fast as I could down the ramp also, which was pretty fun. And then you asked if I do like any kind of advocacy. I would say like 95% of my advocacy is around air travel and making it more accessible. So I think, airlines, it's really a discriminatory industry currently. No offense to Delta. Or maybe a little bit, because I would like to talk with you all, but most of my advocacy is around that, because I mean, there have literally been people that died from having their wheelchair damaged. And Gracia Figueroa, a couple of years ago, she was flying with United, not Delta, and flying with United, got to her destination. Her wheelchair was pretty badly damaged, and she developed a bad pressure sore from that damage. She died 3 months later from that damage that the airline did. And so air travel isn't anymore like kind of a right or wrong, I don't know what's the right word, but like, it's not something that we can casually just look at and say, oh, well, that kind of sucks, that your wheelchair was damaged. Like, it's literally a life or death scenario at this point. I think there's been 3 deaths from airline damages now in the past couple of years. And so, I mean, within the travel industry, I think that's number 1, and something that all of us need to really focus on and try to really support All Wheels Up, support organizations. And whenever you see, someone online that's had their wheelchair damaged, if they've made a TikTok or a reel, like, please share it. Let your friends and family know how crucial that is. And it would just feel like, if you got your legs broke on a plane, like, that would be terrible. So, yeah. Yeah, but thank you all so much. I really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey. We really appreciate you being here and just taking the time to really go around the state and visit our partners. So thank you so much. So just a few housekeeping things before you guys sneak out to the exhibitor break. And by the way, our exhibitor breaks this week at the conference have been sponsored by Visit Tualatin Valley and Seven Feathers Casino. So can we give them a round of applause for all the coffee? I know a lot of you in this room, which means I have your cell phone numbers, so please be on time tonight for the tours. Portland is ready to shine, and we are so excited to welcome you on, I think we have over 11 sightseeing tours, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think I talked about our sponsors and exhibitors this year really being creative and bringing some surprise and delights to you. We saw that this morning with our friends from Delta Airlines. Well, our friends from Portland Spirit have something fun for you in the next exhibitor break. So it's time for a little game. Our friends Mandy and Mindy at the Portland Spirit have hidden 30 green anchor keychains just outside the Portland Ballroom. If you find one, not only will you get a nifty keychain that will keep your keys afloat if they happen to fall in the water while exploring one of Oregon's many beautiful waterways, but included is a coupon that you can turn in to registration to get 2 free sightseeing cruises. So happy hunting, enjoy your exhibitor break, and I'll see you all tonight. Thank you.